It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC,
Batman, Wonder Woman,
Marvel,
Spider-Man,
Image,
Spawn, Saga,
Boom,
Once and Future, Power Rangers,
or whatever book or publisher you follow,
we cover them all here.
this is the place for you.
That's right, it's for everyone.
This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
Let's get it.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo. It has been quite an interesting few weeks since our last episode, and having the writing team over at New History of the DC Universe, the Dakota incident on, it led to a lot of interesting conversations in the comic book community, especially in the part of the community that is typically populated by people of color, including myself. And it led to a lot of healthy conversation about where Black comics are and should be in the world today. And very healthy. I really appreciated the candor that came from all sides on this matter, and it definitely means that everyone is passionate about it, and so much so Joe Ilyich posted yesterday that DC announced that the Dakota incident is going back to press for a second printing. So I am excited and happy for those guys who all put in the hard work to bring the Dakota incident to life. And so that's not only the writing team of Joe and Stephanie and Nicholas Draper-Ivey and Morgan Hampton, but also the team of artists and colorists, the letterers, and the editor of the associate editor on that book, Marquise Draper, for just putting all the hard work to bring the Dakota incident to life and setting the tone out there, even on social media, to have the discussions that has been going on since they appeared on my show, as well as a few others that are out there in the world of pop culture and comics. So what's going on in this episode? Well, I decided we're going to do a little bit more on the Milestone side. This episode, I'm going to be sitting with writer Evan Narcisse, and we're going to be talking about Batman Static Beyond. Issue number 4 came out this past Wednesday. So we're going to talk about the work that he's doing on that, the connection that Batman Static Beyond has to what we've been seeing, not only in the Dakota incident, but also what we saw near the end of The Kids All Fight, which was that one shot during DCKO. And he gives his thoughts on everything that has happened over the past few weeks as well, with regards to the idea of Black comics, Black comic creators, and their place, and how he feels things should be. So we had a good conversation, and once I get back, we're going to just jump right into what I'll be doing for the episode after this one. But here it is. This is my interview with writer Evan Narcisse, talking about Batman Static Beyond, the series as a whole, and in particular issue number 4, again, that just came out. If you haven't read it yet, please go do so. Press pause and come on back, and then listen to what he and I have to say about the issue and just our thoughts on the series. We have 2 more issues after this one that just came out. So here it is, my conversation with writer Evan Narcisse, talking about Batman Static Beyond, and I will see you all on the other side. Hey folks, it's Theo. I am sitting here with Evan Narcisse, writer of Batman Static Beyond. Issue 4 is out on shelves now, and it is a doozy once you get to an end of it. If you haven't read issue 4 yet, press pause, go read it, and come back, because we're going to be talking a little bit of spoilers as we get into the penultimate issue that's coming out next month in issue number 5. Evan, welcome to the show. How are you?
6 issues.
Yeah. We got 6 issues. The penultimate is next month.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Sorry. All right. Yes. Yeah. I'm good. Busy. Some non-comics day job stuff keeping me busy. And a little bit of running around this weekend. I have a high schooler and shuttling them around to their various responsibilities is part of my life. And I did a small con up in Waco, Texas on Saturday, which was fun. So just spinning a lot of plates, trying to keep everything going.
That's good. So again, issue 4 is out, and it was quite a doozy, especially with my good friend Evan making his presence known to Terry McGinnis, and again to Virgil Hawkins, aka Static. But before we get into that, and again, it's been a quite interesting weekend, especially in the world of Milestone, and you're doing your part with the Batman Static story. But we recently had last week with the Dakota incident coming out, and there's been a lot of conversation, healthy conversation, I would think, with regards to the support of Black comics and Milestone in general. As someone who has been writing Milestone characters, what are your thoughts on where the world of Milestone is these days?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, let me say first off by saying, I always say Milestone made me, and it's true. I was in college when the original run came out in 1993, and it meant everything to me. It was like getting something you didn't know you realized you needed so badly, right? And I think, one of the key hallmarks of what the original founders did was they made a multicultural superhero universe, right? It wasn't just Black folks. It was folks from all marginalized backgrounds of every stripe, right? Multiple gay, lesbian, transgender characters, famously experimented with gender fluidity and masquerade in the Blood Syndicate. It was just, it opened up, windows into other experiences that I hadn't even thought about being represented in comics. So those, the legacy of the original stuff is still really important to me personally, and I think for the industry overall. It was a good example of how to build out that kind of universe, right? We're super saturated in superhero universes nowadays, right? But back then, standing up a new one was this incredibly tricky proposition, right? Think about what came out around the same time: Image, Valiant, and there was a cohesion and a sense of purposefulness to the Milestone books that felt far and away different from the other stuff that came out at the time. And I think that still persists, right? That sense of mission. So, as far as the recent conversations around the Dakota incident and Black comic book characters and supporting them, I'll be just another voice joining the chorus here. They're not mutually exclusive, right? Yes, Milestone comes out from DC, which is, a division of a mega corporation, run by Warner Brothers Discovery. Still weird saying that. And yeah, it may look like, okay, it's just a big corporation trotting out Black characters, melanated characters during February, and that's it, right? But those of us who make those books, Morgan, Joe, Stephanie, we're not just here for February. You know what I'm saying? We work all year long, right? And when there's a moment to shine a light on these characters in this universe, it's super important, right? Schedule when a book comes out is not up to us, right? What goes into it, the intentionality, the story, the meaning, how we decide to like bring forth legacy or not, depending on what kind of story you're telling. You can't always trot out like nostalgia. But yeah, like those choices are all super difficult no matter when you're doing it, right? And where you're putting that kind of stuff. And like I said, it's not mutually exclusive that these characters exist at the expense of another. I think is a bad framing, and one that I'm not going to perpetuate. So that's one thing. And the other thing is like, look, the Milestone fan of me wants a return to like 1994, 95, when there was a line with multiple books and they were all cooking, and you had different visions from different creative teams, different subject matter. The thing that's the most important about Milestone in its most vibrant iteration to me, the OG books, was like multiplicity, right? Like, Static was different than the characters in the Blood Syndicate, and they were different than Icon, and they were different than, Death Wish or Zombie, or the characters and heroes. Like, there's a lot of multiplicity. There's a lot of variation and tones that you can embed in that kind of stuff, right? There was like a playfulness to like Donner and Blitzen's relationship in the original comics that like was really meaningful to me as a reader. So all this stuff, right? So personally, my wish for Milestone, however it moves forward, is getting back to that multiplicity, right? Like, I don't want just a static ongoing. I want multiple ongoings of all these characters and some of the new characters, like I was lucky enough to be asked to write the Static team up that introduced the canonically accepted version of a Nazi in the DC universe. And like, yeah, I want to see more with him. Joe used that character in the Shadow Cabinet miniseries that he did. So I just want all this stuff to kind of get back to where it was in the original version. And hopefully that can create new opportunities for new creators, for marginalized backgrounds, and new characters, right? And the thing is, DC, as a company that makes entertainment for a mass audience, they're always going to be looking at the bottom line. And I think we have a very vocal, passionate fan base around these characters. And again, I don't think them seeing more robust implementation of like a new iteration of the Milestone universe like precludes any other thing from existing out there, so that's part one. I think part two is like, Black superhero fans like have a long history of being underserved, right? Like, we ain't getting as much as we need, like for our characters, right? And you can get into debates about like what's trendy, what's not, what's on a TV screen or a movie screen, what's not. But like, I've never gone through a period in my life as a reader, a critic, and a creator where I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need any more. There's certain things where I'm like, it's not for me. But like, I never felt like my plate is too full, and we can stop with all this now. And I think that's where all this conversation and desire comes from, right? Like, we still feel like there's so many different kinds of stories to tell, and so many different kinds of appetites to satisfy in terms of these characters, other characters, that I think there's a lot of collective frustration, and that's, it comes out in moments like around this conversation. And look, let's be real, that leak did not help, right?
No.
Like it created some conversation. I'm not one of those people that says any PR is good PR. But like, it just shows that something about these characters is important to a lot of readers, right? And not to speak for Black indie creators who are doing their own thing, but that's, I think part of the legacy of Milestone too. Like, a lot of us before those books came out didn't know what a career in comics looked like for Black and brown people, right? Like, I'm a little bit older, so I remember learning that, Christopher Priest was a Black person and Dwayne McDuffie and stuff, right? But seeing them realize careers where it felt like, oh, okay, you're getting to dig deeper, right? You're getting to like execute your craft in a way that feels like nobody's holding you back, is really important. And that, I think that's a legacy that of Milestone that doesn't have to live exclusively within DC, right? It's like, nah, you can tell your story. You can tell your story. You can find an audience for it. It might be hard. It was never going to be easy, right? Because of the sociocultural environment we exist in, like in that way, 96 isn't all that different from 2026, like we're still, fighting against, I think, a prevailing sentiment that Black stories need to prove themselves as like viable in the marketplace. And, so that struggle is not going to go away, but the struggle is to like, whether you can do this or not, or should you, I think that's an answer to the question. I think you have a story to tell. You can tell it in comics. Finding an audience is always going to be tricky, but like, don't let the idea that there's not a marketplace for this, there's not an audience for this, like hold you back. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm definitely on the same page with you. We should be able to do both. I don't know why we can't do both. Supporting the big two and supporting independent projects. Stephanie has her independent work that she's been doing.
Yeah.
Nicholas does his stuff. Morgan is writing an ongoing by himself.
Yeah.
Joe has his own company with helping individuals get their IPs into the comic book industry. So why can't we do both? He's writing the story in Noir the New Black. So I should be able to support what he's doing at DC with Static and the Dakota incident, as well as picking up those books on Kickstarter or supporting folks like the Tuskegee Heirs and those stories. I should be able to do both and not feel I have to justify it, and I'm happy to get your thoughts on that as well. So I appreciate that, especially, again, the conversation has been great. It's been healthy just having all of those points of views out there. And totally agree the leak didn't help. And I'm kind of perturbed that they released the digital file as well, which I think could hurt as well. They usually will wait a month after release before it's out there on the DC platform, but it's out now. So I don't think that helped as well. But I'm happy that despite those things, folks stepped up and showed out with regards to the Dakota incident. And I'm hoping and hoping that the conversation continues and we see more actions from DC. But
Theo, I just want to say one thing too, in addition to that, like, the Dakota incident is a bestseller, right? Like, you see multiple reports of people not being able to find it in shops, like shops selling out. I think that's in large part due to the initiative that Joe announced, right? But Batman Static's been selling very well. I can't quote numbers, but it's a matter of public record that issue 1 sold out. We went to the second printing. We have strong sales up until 3, as far as I know. So I think, again, with Static as an individual character, there's a huge appetite, for him to be front and center in a new ongoing. But I also feel like, people care about the Milestone stable of characters, right? And the stories that can be told through there. So, like, I think if we're talking sales, like, sales are strong with things anchored to these characters, and I think we can service the back catalog better by putting new work out, right? I think if you look the way that DC is doing what they're doing with the absolute stuff, they're making sure all that backlist is available in second, third, fourth, fifth printings, and obviously it's not the same, but like the back catalog for these big legacy superhero characters and universes is something that we can use to grow audience moving forward. So there's definitely like a feedback loop that can be implemented, and I think having new material that points back to the old material, not in an onerous way, right? Not where you need to read everything and be able to quote chapter and verse, but like, hey, if you like the new version of Static and Blood Syndicate, like go back and read the old ones too, right?
Yeah.
Because that'll give you a more holistic understanding of this universe as a collective project, right? And there's nothing saying that there's not an audience there. I think they just need to be able to find these books and tap into the whole fabric of the Dakotaverse, because there's a lot of great stuff there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and that was and you kind of echo what Nicholas said as well with regards to knowing where the audience is and getting it out there to them, because they want it. They've shown that they have a desire to get this material. So let's talk a little bit about Batman and Static Beyond. So again, issue 4 is out on shelves. Again, if you haven't read it, pause, come back. But before we talk about issue number 4, I have got to talk about issue number 3 and my favorite panel of the entire series thus far. And I don't know if anything will take it until I get to the other issues. Is the clapback with Static on Terry. And let me tell you, every time I read that panel, I just bust out because I see so many friends with that. If you had any damn sense, and that is us, and I'm just like, I absolutely love that. And it just brought me to tears of laughter. But as someone who has written Virgil as a child or as a younger person in the Anansi team up, and as an adult with Batman Static Beyond right now, he's really involved as a character and as a human and as a person. How much thought did you put into growing Virgil, from what we've got from your team up story to what we see now? Because we got a little bit when Nicholas did his one shot in the 30th anniversary that had Terry and Virgil, that first interaction between them two. But now here we have something a little bit more deeper. How much work and thought did you put into that with regards to adult Static, who's a dad, who has these deep relationships now?
One of the things I do when I approach like a legacy character like Virgil is like think about like, okay, refamiliarize myself with the publishing history of the character and think about like what like aggregate kind of personality does that refamiliarization give me, right? So, one of the things I liked about the 2021 version of the character that Vita Ayala and Nicholas worked on was that like, that's an angry Virgil. Like he's not gonna sit around and get bullied. Like the original version of Virgil was more of a classic nerd archetype, right? Kind of meek, introverted, like didn't know how to stand up for himself at first, but like deeply compassionate and curious. I think some of those qualities carried over into the new version that Vita and Nick worked on in their series. And I just put all that stuff together, right? So like compassion. Virgil is somebody who cares about other people, wants them to help him where he can. The curiosity, him being a bit of a science nerd. If you go back to the original books, like he works on his own gear, right? Like his flying disc, yeah, was infamously like trash can lid or a sewer grate cover. Um, and then he creates the disc, and he does that in his little gas station of solitude, right? Like he's a tinkerer, right? So the idea that like all those things come together into an adult who wants to explore his scientific curiosity, knows that there's a community that's been underserved and borderline exploited, that needs protection, like on a communal level, right? He knows it's not just him that's going to do that, right? So all those things are playing in my head as terms of like, okay, what kind of grown up does Virgil go to be? And I think one scene from Nick and Vita's series that first year of the Static relaunch was like, the Hawkins house got firebombed, right? By like Hot Streak. And I'm like, where does that family go after that? They lean on neighbors, friends, other family members. And to me, that's like the spirit of Dakota as like a comic book city. It's where like people get together and help each other out, right? It's a very Midwestern vibe. Dwayne McDuffie was from Detroit. I think some of the stuff we've seen in Minnesota is reflective of that kind of attitude, right? Like, if the help is not coming from the top down, right, from our elected officials and corporations that we patronize, well, then we have to do it for ourselves, right? Like, there's that great line that Jeffrey Thorne put in the new Blood Syndicate books, like for Paris Island, we do it ourselves or we don't get done. I'm paraphrasing here, but like, yeah, that's the ethos of Milestone as a concept. And I think Dakota as a city, and of course that trickles down to Virgil. By virtue of contrast, Terry, Gotham City is a place where people look out for each other, right? Like rather for themselves, right? It's like New York coded. It's like ultra capitalist. It's old money, old world city, right? Like again, like New York or Boston or some of the like cities on the East Coast, like that grew from like the 13 colonies onward, right? There's like a lot of old attitudes about what it means to live like in an urban center. And I think in Dakota, certainly by virtue of like the Big Bang and whatever version you want to stick with, right? I love the new version of the Big Bang, but like to me, that's a moment where you see people helping each other. And you see that in old books and new books, so to me, think about Virgil as a character that grew up through like a communally shared trauma, right? Like he saw people, die, get changed at the Big Bang, and he knows that they didn't get the kind of help they were needed from like a bigger infrastructural standpoint. And he's like, okay, we might have to do this from the grassroots on the way up. To me, like he's the kind of scientist who doesn't necessarily get a federal grant, right? But he's bootstrapping by virtue of having Curtis Metcalf as a mentor, Richie as a creative partner, and his own genius. Like to me, like the technology he comes up with is something that he was cooking up in a private lab away from prying eyes, and not with like the federal government checking in to the utility of it all, which is why you see that cliffhanger at the end of issue 4, right? Where they're like, nah, we've been letting you cook. But now that this stuff happened, we have pretext to come after you. And that's, I think, all part and parcel of the kind of journey he's taken in the comics, right? Like, we know that the federal government has been gone after bang babies, in various, iterations of the Milestone continuities. So I think he's moving with purpose to protect other people who are vulnerable and can be exploited. Sorry, I talk too much, so you just
No,
feel free to jump in.
it's quite okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the point of the interview. So we mentioned technology and we mentioned the government's role in it. And so let's get into the politics of it because this is definitely a political book. You know, whether it's a criticism of technology and how it's being used or a criticism of the government and what it does. I mean, you know, after the first issue where we kind of get a lot about the collective, they make their way back into the story by the end of issue 4, where we see now
Yeah.
they have an interest in Q juice also. And so now we're going to see this big, huge galactic government try to basically put their weight on what's going on in Dakota. What does do when you decide to create stories like this? Do you try to hold back on the political argument that eventually comes out, or do you really just say, "Here it is, take it or leave it"?
I mean, look, this is a superhero action story, right? You know, it's got two characters with two different points of view from two cities. To me, there is a politic embedded in that, right? Like, how do the places we grow up in become, you know, mature adults inside of, like, affect how he moves through the world, right? With Virgil, you can see, yeah, no, he's like, let's try and figure out a way forward together, right? Whereas Terry, I think, is more individualistic. Um, he's the inheritor of the Batman mantle, and is more of a loner, you know? He's operated in team dynamics before, but like the vast majority of his like superhero stuff is him intervening in people's lives and crises by himself, right? So, and then you got Bruce as a mentor, right? It's like, okay, like collectivism is not something I think that lives in his brain 24/7, right? And there's some stuff in issue 5 and 6 that will highlight that as well. It's not to say he's a bad person, of course not, but he grew up in a city where it's dog eat dog, right? And he became a superhero under a mentor who's like not the easiest person to get along with, right?
Hey,
So I think
and they pointed that out, and you know they pointed out in that one panel where I think it was Richie, it was either Richie or it was Amistad who said, and Uncle Verge told me that Batman was a dick. I thought he was talking about the original. So
yeah. It kind of comes with being like part of the Bat family, right? You can have some edge to you. So that was part of it, but back to the politics of it all, it's like when you think about how we thought about technology like in the early 2000s, right? When Batman Beyond was coming out, like there's still a lot of optimism about ways that like technology could connect us to each other, you know, be a tool for progress and information sharing. And I think, you know, now in 2026, you know, 25 some odd years later, we know the dark side of that, right? How extractive, you know, algorithmically driven social media platforms can be, the way influence the way people think and act, all this stuff, right? So it's hard to feel optimistic about like technological innovation when you know that there's always a dark side lurking now. I think collectively we have a lot less naivete around that stuff. And you know, you see that paradoxical frustration embedded inside of like Melvin, the shutdown, who's our villain of this series. He's always kind of like wanted to engage with it less, and then he gets his powers and technology hurts him, right? You know, and he decides I'm going to get rid of as much of it as I can, right? He targets the Q station in Dakota, causes a chain reaction that creates a global blackout, and wants to get revenge against Static for what he sees as his role in this technology, right? For Static's part, he's like, what I want to do in creating the Q grid was help people who are under fringes of society who don't have, enough access to networking and clean energy. If we look at what's happening in the real world in 2026, where, the infrastructure needed to power AI technologies, we know that it takes up space and power and water. There, it hoovers up computer components that we need for other devices, graphics cards, motherboards, all this stuff that's used to build AI infrastructure is also the stuff that goes into our phones and laptops and whatnot, right? We're going to see prices on those go up. I also am a game designer, so like I have one foot in the world of technologically driven entertainment, right? So like if my Steam Deck dies and I need to replace it, the replacement is going to cost, 1.5 times more at least. It's going to be, everything's going to be expensive. We got Nintendo talking about they might raise the price of the Switch too, because components are costing more. PlayStation's like, that next PlayStation console might not come out for a minute because these prices are crazy. So if you extrapolate into the future where these kind of things don't stop happening, then yeah, there are going to be people who don't have enough energy to do their normal everyday tasks. They may not be able to get onto the internet without paying a ridiculous premium. So there's a few lines of dialogue that reflect this stuff in the series, because this is what happens when tech giants are allowed to grow unchecked, right? And it affects the world, and that's a political issue. It's not just like in the marketplace. It's okay. You see these public debates about in the places where they're trying to build these server farms, these AI
server farms, and the pushback.
Yeah, and we see the pushback, right? So I felt like Shutdown is kind of emblematic of that on like a individual level, but he's also frustrated the way like his life is like hemmed in and bordered by technological mandates that he didn't have a choice in. He's like, I just want to learn how to do something and not have to tell a machine how to do it for me. There's a line, I'm paraphrasing one of his lines in issue 3, but yeah, he's massively frustrated. But I think the other thing too, Theo, that I don't want to get lost in the conversation is that he's immature, like he's about Terry's age, right? So let's put him what, 15, 16,
they're
still in high school.
They're classmates, more or less.
Yeah, and like teenagers think they know everything about the world when they really don't, right? So the way he's lashing out is meant to be reflective of like somebody who doesn't have like a theory of mind or like a philosophical outlook on the world fully formed yet. He's got frustration and pain made physical by virtue of his being changed by the Q juice. But he's not thinking this all through, right? He's not like a mastermind. He's lashing out and targeting certain things because of the way his, relatively immature mind and like a soul that's like kind of fractured are able to make sense of it, So he's reacting. He's reacting. He's not proactive very much. It's more like, no, I'm going to target everything that I blame for my frustration.
And a lot that I see in Melvin is like a child that's doing basically having a temper tantrum, on the page, whether it's how he reacts when he finds out his parents are a part of the project that built the Q grid in Neo Gotham. He's just, and you could see it. It doesn't take much for him to get into that temper tantrum mode, because when he does, he disappears and he shows up somewhere else, and you see a lot of that from him. But yeah, the immaturity is definitely there, and when I look at Shutdown, and that was one of the questions that I was going to ask you. He seems like in the future, not right now, because again, he has a lot of backlash at Static for putting the idea of the Q grid together, which I thought was a absolutely wonderful idea of taking something that was so tragic with the Q juice and its role in the Big Bang and trying to make good of it. And and now he's getting this huge bit of backlash from Shutdown. But looking at the future, is Shutdown, could Shutdown be more of a nemesis for Terry, especially considering he's from Neo Gotham?
Yeah. So one thing I'll say about the back half of the series is that we do shift locales a little bit more to Neo Gotham. That'll become clear in issue 5 and a little bit of issue 6. Talking about Shutdown, I have to go all the way back to the beginning of this project and shout out Nick. This wouldn't happen for him. This series is basically a quasi sequel to Static Beyond series, a short story that he did in the Milestone 30th anniversary issue. And Shutdown as a character, pretty much starts with Nick, right? And again, some of these existential philosophical concerns that we've been talking about. Nick beyond that shit. He's this is a concern for him, and Melvin as a character, the visuals, and the idea of his dysfunctional relationship with technology turning into a power set that can disrupt things that's 90% Nick. So he's, I think, definitely well suited to be an antagonist for Terry as well. And we see what happens. Terry is Batman mostly by virtue of a cutting edge bat suit, right? And that makes him ripe for targeting for somebody like a Shutdown, who doesn't even necessarily know that, right? But he knows that, I fucked you up, right? Last time we tangled. But he's meant to be a useful antagonist for both of these characters, right? The Q juice, and he's a bang baby from outside of Dakota, which connects him to Static. He's from Neo Gotham, which connects him to Terry, and obviously the school connection. So it's just all about creating some vectors of conflict with one supervillain and two superheroes, right? But yeah, he's I think a character that is immature, but I think still got some surprises, I think, for readers in the rest of the issue is what I'll say. The rest of the series is what I'll say.
Okay. So before I close things out, I want to talk a little bit more about the collective. Because again,
the cooperative.
I'm sorry. They've been kind of quiet the last few issues, since the first, and now we see they really make this comeback when they're telling the story about the Q juice that is on Earth and how it's being developed. But first of all, I gotta say, Warhawk and bringing Shahira and that whole throwback to Justice League Unlimited and that relationship between John and Shahira, I just absolutely love it. Thumbs up. But I thought that was absolutely wonderful to see, because I'm hearing Warhawk, I'm seeing Warhawk, and I'm like, okay, is that the same kid? Is that the same kid? And then in issue 4, Mom pops in with that little gray streak in her hair. So I'm just like, oh, that's just such a wonderful throwback to have, because we haven't seen that in a while. So thank you for that.
The one thing I'll say about that, Theo, is that's not just nostalgia. You know what I'm saying? There's a story reason for that. Again, and I laid out in the issue, but to me, this is the Elseworlds where elements of the animated stuff and various comic book iterations are all mashed together, right? The people at DC can figure out what universe this is in. That's their job. but Shira goes through, that star-crossed episode arc in Justice League Unlimited, where like we learn about Thanagar sending her kind of as an advanced agent. She rebels and decides to stay loyal to Earth, partially by virtue of John. But like she's got a knowledge of like the xenopolitics of the wider universe, right? Like that other members of the Justice League don't have. And she's like, y'all, it ain't just the Thanagarians. Like there's other cultures out there, and we need to figure out like how Earth can coexist with that stuff, right? So to me, that's why she's a member of the cooperative. And she basically says as much. And Earth is trying to become part of this alliance because, again, the same problems that we see plaguing us today in the real world are probably going to be only exacerbated and amplified in the future. And Virgil's like, bet, okay, if I create this technology and the cooperative deems it worthy of inducting Earth into this alliance, then maybe we can get ahead of our problems, right, on this planet, like ecological ones, technological ones, inequities and whatnot. So yeah, these characters are all like working towards the same purpose in different ways in different arenas. But yeah, Shire is not just there to be like, hey, remember me? It's like, nah, here's what I've been doing, informed by my backstory, to help move Earth move forward in a positive and hopefully like redemptive way.
And I know it has that Elseworlds imprint on it, but I really consider it as close to canon as possible, especially seeing that I don't know if it was strictly under Morgan's writing or maybe it was when he was still with Jeremy Adams, but Shahira and that relationship with John was brought up in Green Lantern Corps as well. So we know it's out there. We know that it's comic history, and it's not just something that's stuck to to the animated universe. But what over the next few issues, without spoiling anything, what will we learn about the collective and the group upon which Augustus' homeworld is a part of that we may not have known before?
Well, the cooperative gets like mostly a light touch here, like I wanted them to be part of the backdrop to establish a goal that Virgil's moving towards, and not just Virgil, obviously Augustus and Shira and stuff. Like when you think about like the UN, it's like, yeah, there's not everybody in the UN gets along. The various member nations can be at war with each other, right? Like, but it is a place to try and resolve conflict, uphold human rights, and work together collectively for the good of the planet, right? And the cooperative serves the same purpose for like the DC cosmos in this series. We'll see that there is like internal tensions, right? We'll see that there is a bit of intrigue there that affects greatly what's happening on Earth, right? And we'll see that some of the things that the rogue representatives we meet in issue 4, like they're gonna be pursuing that agenda very aggressively. That's all I want to say without spoilers.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. So yeah, issue 4 is out. I absolutely loved it, especially at the end. Again, we see the government shows up. They're coming to arrest Static, and Eban is like, "Yeah, bro, you on your own now." Eban's being Eban. But
it's been so fun to write Eban because, like, yeah, like he's the classic like anti-hero archetype for me, and again, embedding his motivations in the backstory from other moments of the Milestone publishing history was like super important to me. It's like calling back to Shadows of Dakota that Nick and Vita did, and being like, yeah, we're not gonna let people mess with us. This thing happened, and we may look like big juicy targets of like human size weapons of mass destruction, but we're not going to let people like exploit us like that. So to me, that's Ebon's ethos. And, you know, the thing that I was most happy about in issue 4 was the sequence after the fight shut down in Dakota. Ebon's walking through the grounds of the school, and he's like dapping up some of the kids, hugging some of the other ones, like tossing them up in the air to his brother. All the while he's talking about the kind of care and nurturing that Shutdown hasn't gotten, and is why his powers are so crazy. Yeah. Like, he's like, yeah, if he had basically, in not so many words, if he had somebody to take care of him, that was taking care of him, looking after him in a way where he wasn't so frustrated, he might be more well-adjusted, right? But he didn't have that, and so that's why, you know, his got this like emotional teleporting thing going on where like he gets upset and he blinks out into another location. Yeah, the kid is messed up, and Ebon knows where that kind of trauma can come from.
Yeah,
he's seen it firsthand.
Yeah, I see a lot of shadows of Dakota Ebon in Melvin. Very reactionary, you know, not always thinking it through. And it would be interesting to see someone tell the story of how Shadows of Dakota Ebon get to become Batman static Ebon that we see in issue 4. I think there's a ton of story that can be told with that. I know when I interviewed Nick and the writing team about the Dakota incident, you know, the team up that I wanted to see was two anti-heroes in Ebon and the Shadow go at it, because again, two different characters that don't back down for anything and have their own techniques on, you know, it can be questionable to get to that point. But I loved seeing again the maturity in Ebon that we see with Static as well. But I absolutely love that character, and I fell in love with him when Nick and Vita was writing Shadow of Dakota. But I don't want to keep you, and I want to be respectful of your time. So again, Batman Static Beyond issue number 4 is on shelves now. Pick it up. I absolutely loved it. Again, getting all the way to the ending with Virgil and Terry being. I gotta ask real quick. Okay, so what's the idea behind the cape with Terry's new suit, the revised suit, and bringing that in? What put that thought in your head to get that out there?
Yeah, to me, the suit that we see Terry wearing as of issue 4 is like another prototype that Bruce made that, you know, didn't get used. It's been sitting in a vault somewhere. You know, I haven't had a chance to really play this out in the series, and I'm hoping readers will just be able to pick it up from inference. But like the splines of the cape, he can shoot darts out of there, right? But they also work as a delivery system for smoke, right? So like the first time we see him wear the suit, you see like there's smoke all in the panel. Sorry, I have the issue in front of me. I'm trying to find. Yeah, like
and he comes in. He comes in from above. Yeah.
Yeah. So all this smoke is coming from the cape, right? Yeah. So you know, whereas old school Bruce would have had thrown some smoke pellets and whatnot, like it's all coming from the cape, right? So he can literally be shrouded in darkness and smoke the whole time, right? You know, it's obviously one of Batman's big tools is misdirection, and this is a way to like get that on command, right? Yeah, also like the idea is like he can like swing the cape around and have darts come out outside of it, right? So it's not like technologically driven as his prior bat suit, right? The classic Batman Beyond outfit, but like there's just remixing some of the old functionality in new ways was the idea I was thinking about. Like, you know, this is Bruce tinkering and we're like, oh, what if I did this? What if I did this? And it comes out in a little bit of a different way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I like it. And
again, this is all Nick's design, right? Like, yeah. But this is me just trying to put like a little bit of sauce on it from like a narrative logic standpoint. Yeah, and I was really happy to do that.
Yeah, I love that play up with the black and the red. It looks really nice with the cape. So
Yeah.
again, as I do with all guests on this show, it is time for rapid fire. But we're going to do something a little bit different because, again, yes, you have a background in gaming. So we're going to play a little bit on that with rapid fire this time. And again, as always, there are no correct responses. This is just where you are. And I might throw in my opinion as well. But let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. All right, first up, Nintendo, PlayStation, Sega, Xbox, or PC?
Wow. That's a tough one. I'll say PlayStation because I probably had the longest relationship with that hardware going back to PS1 in college up until PS5 today. Like, I didn't have a Dreamcast. And I had a GameCube and then a Wii and now a Switch, but like some of the older consoles I didn't have. So yeah, I'd say PlayStation. Anyway.
All right. Yeah. I will say if PC games could ever really make itself more compatible with Mac games, I will probably play more PC, more PC-based games. But yeah, I've had a PlayStation since PlayStation 1 as well. So yeah, I'm 100% PlayStation. And I'll stay away from the Wii because I told my rotator cuff playing Tiger Woods golf.
Oof.
So. Oof. All right. Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto?
Oh, Grand Theft Auto.
All right.
Yeah, it's more story rich in my opinion.
All right. Have you seen any scenes of the new one yet?
I mean, I've seen the trailers. I don't have any inside intel for y'all today. Okay. No.
Yeah. Edwin Gallman actually threatened some folks on social media saying if anybody leaks anything about the new one, y'all gonna have to deal with me. All right. Zelda or Final Fantasy?
That's a tough one. I'd say Zelda. Final Fantasy as a franchise goes in so many different directions. You have the MMO. You have like things that feel more magical fantasy. They lean almost close to science fiction in some of the iterations, right? Like to me, Zelda is more consistent with like a high fantasy presentation. And just watching that franchise evolve with like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom has been amazing. Yeah. I'll give the edge to Zelda, even though I'll give the edge to Zelda.
I can only play Final Fantasy VII. That's the only one that I enjoyed playing. I tried getting into a few of the other ones, but for me it's 7 and it's only 7. All right. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Tekken?
Tekken all the way.
All right.
I'm a Lei Wulong is my main. And when they shipped, was it Tekken 5? He wasn't part of the initial roster. I was very sad, but they brought him back. Yeah, no, I go back to when Lei Wulong was basically a stand-in for Jackie Chan. Like, yeah, Tekken all the way.
All right. Last one. Batman the Animated Series or Justice League Unlimited?
Oof, man. That is hard. I mean, look, this is not fair because you really can't have one without the other, right? Like, without Batman the Animated Series, you don't get the rest of the DCAU, including Justice League. That said, I'm going to give Justice League the edge. One, because Wayne McDuffie, my hero, was an integral part of that series. And two, Justice League Unlimited gave you the whole DC universe, Like, we got a Seven Soldiers of Victory episode. We got, like, Question and Huntress going on a double date with Green Arrow and Black Canary. Like, the ensemble energy like amplifies it so much for me. Like, you can tell any kind of story there. We can get that. One of my favorite lines in JLU was Booster Gold talking to Martian Manhunter's like, John, what do you clear after taxes? Like, that's just like such a great line. And we got a Booster Gold episode. Like, you can touch all these characters in that series in really such effective ways. Yeah, so JLU gets the nod from me.
Gotcha. And you the only person I know who struggled more than you with this question was Joe Ilyich because of the same exact reasons with Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah.
Evan Narcisse again. Batman Static Beyond issue 4 is out on shelves now. Make sure you pick up a copy. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. Thank you. I truly enjoyed the conversation.
Appreciate it, Theo. Good conversation.
And so I want to thank Evan Narcisse for joining me again on this week's podcast. Batman Static Beyond issue number 4 is out on shelves right now. It came out this past Wednesday. The penultimate issue number 5, will be out next month. Again, get out there, support the series. It's been great thus far. And again, it fits into everything that's been going on with Milestone, going back to the start of Milestone Returns and just seeing that growth of Virgil from what we got with season 1 of Static to what we have now, and just seeing how all those things fit in together, not only in Evan's story, but also over with New History of the DC Universe, the Dakota incident. And again, that's going back to print for a second printing. So if you weren't able to get a copy of the first printing, check out the website for more details of when the second printing will be made available, and get out there and support it. Again, the more that this series or this story sells, the more it tells DC that we as readers want more of stories such as Static and such as Rocket and Icon and Hardware and everyone else that's a part of the Milestone universe, the Blood Syndicate, Zombie, or Duo. Just bring them all back. They have their place within the DC universe, and we should have an opportunity to support them and pick those titles up. But again, thanks, Evan, for joining me. I truly appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation that I had with him. So next week, I will be sitting down with writer Jordan Clark, and we're going to be talking about his create-owned project, Ancestral Recall. It was out from Ahoy Comics, and it finished up last month, but it is going out on trade in April. It'll be available for trade on April the 14th. And so Jordan's going to join me, and we're going to talk about that series and that trade. And we'll talk a little bit about Milestone as well. Jordan was one of the first members of that first class of the Milestone initiative, that occurred several years ago over at Milestone Media, where they brought together just a ton of comic creators, whether it was writers, artists, but there were individuals of color, people of color, who learned from some of the best over at Milestone, and Jordan was a part of that first class. And so we'll talk a little bit about Milestone and his thoughts and Milestone's place in his heart, again, as being a participant within the Milestone initiative a few years ago. But again, I want to thank Evan, and I want to thank you all for listening in. It's been, like I said, it's been a wild ride over the past couple of weeks as we actively pushed here at the Comic Ben Podcast, as we actively pushed for support of the Dakota incident and those guys that went out of their way to put the project together. But we're going to continue doing what we do. We're going to be talking comics and more. Again, we got Jordan coming up next week. And then after that, I'll also be sitting with Mark London, who is the CEO and chief creative officer over at Mad Cave Studios. He has a new series that is coming out this month. That's a part of his Underworld universe that he's created over there at Mad Cave. So got a lot of stuff lined up over the next couple of weeks. So tune in and be a part of that. I want to thank all of my new subscribers. Over the past few weeks, the site on our YouTube page has really grown. I really appreciate that. Spread the word. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff over the coming weeks and months as we do what we do in the world of comics. But again, I want to thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next week as I sit down with Jordan Clark to talk about Ancestral Recall and some other things that's going on with him. But until then, you all be safe out there. I will see you all in in about a week. And until then, y'all be safe out there on the streets of Dakota. See y'all next time. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Ben Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_Ben, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4Life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.